Hello there, you're watching AMN English. This is our weekly program, Diplomatic Corner. Today I brought to you Dr. Melanie Porter. She's taught English for years. We will talk about African education and its challenges. Stay with us. Well, Doctor, welcome to the program. I really appreciate your time, and I again thank you for coming here. Would you mind first just telling us a little about yourself?
First of all, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the honor and the privilege of being able to speak to you and your audience. So thank you for that. So as you said, I was the English language fellow. I worked with the U.S. State Department.
The kind of experience that we have currently is quite different from the experience that we had, some years ago. We used to use chalk in the classroom, but these days things are really changing. A teacher is supposed to introduce himself with the new technology, the 21st skills, all right, critical thinking. We need to use digital technology. These days there are many teachers who are not able to use technology properly. So we need to update ourselves in many ways.
We are living in the contemporary world. A world when you use teacher-centered method, as many teachers use, you will not help the learners. So we are saying learners should be creative. And learners should at least discover things, new things. So I also suggest that the government should do something, should develop these new skills, or also organize workshops and conferences to set awareness, to aware the society.
Let's talk about the associations, particularly the language associations and teacher associations in Africa. What significant role do you think these teachers associations play in terms of just motivating teachers and students, in terms of equipping teachers and students with the required knowledge and skills? It's also important, I think, just making the government, the local and the national governments revive their policies, education policies. So what do you think their role in this regard?
That's a great question. And so while, yes, I believe that the curriculum should be reflective of African cultures, but there definitely should be an adjoining so that curriculums can be reflective of the global conversation. And so teacher associations, well, let me back up. Professional associations, right, for every industry do certain things. Professional associations create camaraderie, create avenues of professional development, empowerment. It is the place where training happens. So if we're talking about teacher associations, right, African professional teaching associations, as well as the global teacher associations, I'm going to use one particular association. It is not the only one, but it is a good example. TESOL, so TESOL, Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages. It's an organization that has local impact, regional impact, and then global impact. So you see how it will take something very localized. And the members of that association can talk about, strategize, prepare for the issues that are common in that local area. Connect them to those in the region, which is a little bit of a larger circle. So maybe the region is not just the Amhara region or the Omo region or the Gambela region, but maybe the region is Ethiopia, Kenya, and South Sudan. Right. So we enlarge the region a little bit more. So what's happening in Ethiopia that may be shared in Kenya? And those teachers have conversations that says, well, what strategies did you use to develop solutions for XYZ problem, and vice versa. And it is a dialogue and discussion that can be happening so that teachers are empowered and developed and have access to resources that may extend beyond just the local region. And then we move from the local to the regional to now an international conversation, which is a much larger umbrella. And so now we move Ethiopian teachers outside of Ethiopia. We join them to the Horn of Africa, but then we join the Horn of Africa to the global perspective.
For quality education, we need professional development, such as this conference, and I think bringing more people into the conferences and having chances for them to collaborate is one way that we can improve the quality of the education. Working with the ministries, Ministry of Education is another way, and working with them and talking with the ministries about 21st century skills, ways of developing the language in their country is also a very important way to improve the quality of education, and doing teacher training through with the ministry, collaborating with them so that we are working with all the teachers in the associations, not just those that are able to attend the conference, but also with working directly with the ministry so that we can all work together for that same goal, to have the same goal together of improving the education throughout the country.
Quality education involves a lot of things from people, teachers, the environment they teach in, what kind of students they teach, resources, support, all this. I would say that, our governments would say that they tried their best. Okay, we will not deny it, they have tried, probably. But still, we need to work hard.
Those associations create a wonderful tool and avenue where training is happening, empowerment and development, right? And even though this is particularly to English teachers or teaching English to speakers of other language, so even though that is the wider umbrella that we want to talk about, there is a place where, for instance, the question and answer session, like that's a platform where I, as a local teacher, can come and ask my question and say, well, my students are having this problem. I can ask a room full of hundreds of thousands of teachers that may have experienced my issue, and then they now can offer me suggestions and solutions. They now may be able to tell me different strategies that I may not have come up with and thought of. That empowerment, now I can go back to my classroom, go back to my region, not only and solve the problem in my classroom, but now I can then share it with my colleagues, and now we can begin to strategize and provide solutions. Associations, that connectivity moves the industry forward. We solve solutions, particularly the solutions where government may be slow to respond. If in my local region, if oversized classrooms is a problem, and it is, it's not just a problem in Ethiopia, it's a problem everywhere, right? That's one particular issue. And the government does not seem to be responding to this issue. It's been an issue year after year after year. But through the association, we now can come together as a body of teachers and instructors around said issue. And now we have, through discussion, we have viable options and solutions of strategies of how to manage an issue that, one, is not going away, that the government is not providing a resource for, but now we at least have an opportunity to try different strategies to yet move education forward and instruction forward, but I can now not burn out as a instructor and as a worker, but I can develop different ways to respond to the issue that I know I'm going to face when I return to my classroom. Associations, professional associations in every industry are powerful tools. It engages not only the local individual, but it puts them into the arena of a global conversation. If I think that whatever my lesson is that has been great and my students respond to it, I may want to teach that to my colleagues, but not just to my local colleagues in my school or in my zone, in my cabinet. But now I can take my lesson to the region. I can take my lesson to the world, which empowers me as the educator. I now feel empowered that I'm doing something productive with my career. That and that's exciting. That's progressive. And so while Ethiopia and the Ethiopian government may not be giving me a pat on the back that I probably think I need and deserve, but I found that celebration through the connections the professional association has now brought me to. Connecting with other people, like-minded people, may be an opportunity for professionals to find ways of celebration for the work that they are doing. It it's an operating tool that every industry has that I think every professional in whatever industry that they are need to be able to participate in. So as you said, I experienced that in Ethiopia. And one of the challenges that I faced is trying, and it was my approach to that deficiency. My approach is getting people to understand that the foreign language of English in Ethiopia or other African nations, particularly in Ethiopia, though, there is a need for perfection that I battled against. And so my approach was to try to chip away at the need for perfection and that cultural burden it places upon the individual. Students, teachers, instructors, everyone. English is relegated in the classroom only. Students and teachers, instructors did not use the language outside of the classroom. And that is one of the barriers where proficiency won't evolve if we leave it in the classroom. And so every day I'm encouraging students, don't worry about grammatic perfect proficiency. Just speak. Just speak. And so being able to relieve the pressure of that cultural burden that it had to be perfect. So in my audience, there was not the ridicule that they said that they would receive in other places and in other spaces. The more you read, the better you become a reader, right? So the more you speak, the better you will become as a speaker. But we have to be able to do it freely without ridicule and judgment. And if, again, as I said earlier, if we start in the lower grades and we encourage and empower the students to do it without the laughter and the judgment and the ridicule, and develop their esteem with the language, that they would be comfortable to do it outside of the classroom. One of the advantages to coming into Ethiopia and not speaking Amharic, it is a challenge, yes, because when I go into the marketplace, I don't know what they're saying to me, and I can't respond in a language that I don't know. So it forces them to recollect the little bit of English that they know so that we can find a common ground. And so what I found is that there were people, community people, ready to use English, but now finally found someone to practice with. And so I would share with my colleagues, if English is the medium of instruction, every one of you should be practicing with each other. I watched in Ethiopia young children be free. In my neighborhood, I lived in Kabale 13, right behind one of the local schools. And in my neighborhood, I had about 8 children that I met with every week. We hung out in my garden and they were free to talk to me. They asked questions, they were curious, they wanted to know. And even amongst those children, I could see their different levels of English. I could tell who was speaking English not only at school, but at home. And they began to develop ways to teach each other English, not just speaking with me, but being free with each other to invite each other to speak more English, not just with Dr. Melanie, but with each other. So when we would be in the neighborhood playing games, they would speak to each other in English. I would share with them, don't stop. Don't stop this carefree approach to the language just because you get older. Don't stop this carefree approach with the use of the language when the life around you is going to change, because the lessons at school will change. Coffee ceremonies are happening in Ethiopia every day, all day long. We're sitting around drinking coffee, tea. And so I brought that very common practice where people are very comfortable doing this coffee. And the conversation piece is the challenge that said, let's now have our coffee in an exclusively English conversation. So I provided table topics, conversation starters that again allowed people to freely engage. We're not trying to solve all of Ethiopia's problems. We're just having regular conversations. For instance, even a very comical conversation, something that you would just enjoy, something thought-provoking, but it required you to use language, right? So we were sharing in the coffee conversation, I would ask you, if you were to lose one of your senses, one of our 5 senses, which one would it be and why? Which one of your senses could you afford to lose? And so something thought-provoking, something that it is not going to diminish you at all, but it is inviting you to develop not only your critical thinking skills and the outside of the box thinking, but it also is inviting you into the dialogue and conversation. Students are having something in their hand. If we can provide just a book and students feel comfortable opening the pages, reading, we not only become better readers, better listeners, but we also become better speakers. If we are going to tackle the proficiency level, we have to do it in a strategic way that answers a lot of things all at the same time. Education institutions must find creative ways to not only engage the students and engage the instructors, but engage the community so that everyone is feeling empowered. In Baydar, I took coffee conversations from campus. We were hosting them on campus, but then I took it to the community and we held it in the Ganame Library. There's a population of people going to the library. They're not at the university. They're not coming to the university, but they also are interested in learning. And we bring the community together so that there's not this, oh, well, you have to be a professor or a doctor in order to speak English. No, in the marketplace, you too can speak English. But what's going to happen is Ethiopia has to be prepared for the world's audience. In a small restaurant where people are going to come. The food was absolutely delicious. So foreigners are coming and they're telling other foreigners, when you go to Baydar, you have to go to this place. He's using much more language. And so there is a way to engage that is not that everybody has to pack up their bags and go to Canada and the US and Australia. No, we're coming to Africa and students have to be able to engage. But here it is so important that students feel like they don't have to lose their Africanness to engage in the language. It is not lost on me that the learning of English, the use of English for many students is not their second language. It's not even their third. It may be way down the line, fifth or sixth. The ability to hone in on a global language is what's going to set students apart. And that's where the empowerment really will be able to allow students to join the global conversations. That students who want to engage and improve in whatever the industry is, because often students were talking about they wanted a better life. My colleagues were talking about wanting a better life. They want to be able to continue to buy bread for their children. And I shared with them, in order to do that, and this is where language can open those doors, you have to be able to have a global language proficiency in order to do that. And while I have an English bias, if it's not English, then we need to be learning Chinese. Not that English is any better than any other language, French or German or Portuguese. It's not about comparison of better or worse, but it is a global conversation. Because when we get into global spaces, for instance, you go to the UN, English is the language of the discussion. Because no matter where people come from around the world, when they get together, we need a common language of understanding. And that's a barrier that particularly I found in Ethiopia that my colleagues struggled with. And if my colleagues are struggling, the students are also struggling. They don't have a way into the conversation because their proficiency is so low. But I am a firm believer. If I could have stayed in Ethiopia, that is one strategy that I would suggest to everyone, is taking English out, extending it past the classroom. It has to happen in the classroom. It must. It has to happen there, but it must continue outside. If we empower our parents with the language, we empower the community with the language, everyone wins.
Well, Doctor, thank you so much again for your time and for your reflections just on the African education. I really thank you for your perspectives here on behalf of our program, on behalf of Addis Media Network. I hope we would meet again some other days.
Thank you so very much for having me, and I hope we can do it again.
All right. Well, everyone, that's it for now from Addis Media Network English. This was a Diplomatic Corner program. I was with Dr. Melanie Porter, an English fellow. Until I meet you with another guest next week, have a wonderful time.